The Airbus A380 is a complex modern aircraft, which flight sim developers have struggled to simulate accurately since its debut in the early 2000s. This is due to change soon with the arrival of the fly-by-wire A380, but in the meantime, one of the best and worst payware options if you absolutely can't wait to fly a virtual A380. Released in 2005 to coincide with the rollout of the real-life airplane, the Abacus A380 quickly gained a reputation as a cheap attempt to cash in on an aviation trend. Initially available for Flight Sim 2002 and 2004, this was an Airbus in name only. Although the exterior and virtual cockpit models were very much acceptable for the era, the instrumentation was unmistakably ripped from a default Boeing. From the PFD to the auto-flight controls and radio panels, the experience of operating this airplane was functionally identical to that of a 747. There was some attempts at a custom FMC, however it was not based on the Airbus MCDU in any way. It was just an abstraction layer for the default systems, usually seen in the simulator's Garmin GPS pop-up. In terms of flight dynamics, the Abacus A380 stayed fairly true to real-life numbers. However, generic heavy airplane behaviour is not a particularly high bar to meet. The Abacus A380 was updated in 2006 to add compatibility for Flight Simulator X, and the instrumentation was reworked to use elements from the simulator's default A320. Although still a long way from authentic, with this patch, the Abacus A380 managed to elevate itself from truly terrible to almost acceptable, especially given the price. This airplane retailed for only $10 upon its release. That's roughly equivalent to $15 today, the cost of its modern-day equivalents, lo-fi add-ons such as the LVFR suite of Airbus airplanes for MSFS. Although disappointing, the Abacus A380 eventually came to represent reasonable value at the time, if you really wanted to fly the cutting-edge airplane of the day, but your budget wouldn't stretch to our next contender. As a developer, Wilco was seen as the silver standard for Flight Simulator X, almost the PMDG of the Airbus world, but not quite. Their fleet of A320 variants had achieved widespread success and commendation, so when the Airbus A380 arrived, it was only natural that they would produce a quality product. And they did, almost. The exterior model, virtual cockpit and instrumentation was of a high quality and largely authentic. However, Wilco ultimately borrowed a little too much from their A320 line of products while building the A380. The most offensive element of this parts bin assembly approach was the FMC. Although the real-life A380 does have a backup MCDU on the pedestal, which is based on that of the A320 in terms of design and interaction, the main CDU actually features an entirely different interface, more akin to that of the A350. In the Wilco A380, the only FMC available is the backup unit, which has been placed where the main CDU would be on the real airplane. Functionally, the flight planning and management experience in the Wilco A380 was identical to that of an A320. I'm not sure whether Wilco lacked the capability or just the inclination to reskin their Airbus flight management code with a more authentic user interface, but the seemingly lazy reuse of this particular A320 instrument prevents the Wilco A380 from being a truly authentic experience. Retail price at the time was €20. Bear that in mind as we look at our controversial winner. The Peter Hager A380 is ultimately aged, highly priced in my opinion, and imperfect in X-Plane 11. I'm not even sure it works at all in X-Plane 12. However, from a visual and functional perspective, this decade-old add-on is still the most authentic A380 released for a flight simulator to date. Visually, the exterior and virtual cockpit models are realistic representations of the A380. The instrumentation is clearly based on the real airplane, and is not simply an A320 PFD and ND pasted onto the A380's screens. Most importantly, the FMC attempts to replicate the A380's MCDU, with a custom interface clearly based on the real airplane's flight planning and performance management interface. It is of course simplified and nowhere near the fidelity of the similar custom MCDU seen on the Flight Factor A350, but it is not an A320 or default FMC, and that's a huge difference. The Hager A380 also implements a convincing Airbus fly-by-wire system based on the old QPAC plugin, elements of which still form the basis of the popular TOLIS fleet of airplanes. Flight dynamics are sensible and close enough to the actual airplane's numbers during takeoff, cruise and approach, although some hacks were clearly employed to achieve this. For example, at full throttle, this model seemingly uses X-Plane's afterburner functionality to achieve the desired thrust performance, with flames bursting from the engine at full power. This actually went undiscovered for many years, and was only unearthed when X-Plane implemented visual afterburner effects in a 2020 patch. Okay, so perhaps that part isn't visually authentic to the real plane, so best to stick to cockpit view on takeoff. Most of the criticism the Hager A380 receives is based on its value proposition. It is an old product that has been kept alive by sporadic patches. It is $50 more expensive than a PMDG 737 for MSFS, and it does have obvious flaws in the modern simulator. But until the fly-by-wire A380 for MSFS arrives, there is simply no alternative payware product that offers a visually and functionally authentic A380 experience, and that's why, for now at least, the Hager A380 is technically, with some huge caveats, the best A380 currently available for a flight simulator. The takeaway from this video is that the A380 landscape for any flight simulator is not great right now, and my opinion is that you should just wait a little longer for the fly-by-wire A380. While you wait, why not drop a like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.